I believe it's important that women recognize that migraine is very prevalent amongst us women. It's easily ignored, it's very easy to misidentify this, and it's actually extremely easy to treat and to not allow this disease to take over your life.
I was, I think, in 5th grade, and I had these kind of blackout events where I would get really clammy, I would get cold, and I would get sick, and I would pass out. And so at first they didn't know what it was. My mom's a nurse, and so she finally, she kept taking me to doctors who identified it as a pre-migraine event. So I would get those kind of around my period until I was a teenager, and then later in my teens I started getting them kind of as food reactions, as medical, started seeking medical treatment for them. And then when I was about 26, it became chronic. And that was the point where I realized that the migraine care that I was receiving was not working. It was not enough to keep them under control. It just like it kind of, you can't process things the same way when you're in, it's like you always have kind of static.
Andrea and I met really in the middle of her journey, and that's not uncommon for other patients who come to our center. They perhaps have moved here from another area and have been relatively well managed by someone else, or they are maybe frustrated with their care and moving from a different provider. In her case, she had actually moved from a different region, had already been on a particular treatment, and felt she was doing well. But there were definitely gaps in her not being able to meet all of the goals that she had. So in our initial conversations, we were having a discussion about her goals and where she really wanted to achieve things in her lifespan, and looking to the future, wanting to get married, wanting to have a child, and really what that future looked at and what her treatments were at that time.
The most important thing that she does is she listens to me and modifies her care based on what I'm saying, which is, it may not sound like a big deal, but it's huge when you're in pain, and especially when you're seeing people that aren't listening to you. She manages my preventative medication, manages my abortive medication that I need when I'm having an active migraine attack, and I get the Botox every 3 months, so I see her on a regular basis.
I often tell my patients, migraine is a disease, it's lifelong, it's going to change through your life process, and at this very moment we don't have a cure, which is disappointing, but we can easily manage this and make it so that your life is more comfortable, that you're really getting to the point where you can do the things you want to do.
Dr. Ilani and her team are really helping me to manage the migraines through my life cycle. The biggest change was being pregnant. She actually went through pregnancy with me before I got pregnant to tell me, kind of give me a heads up first to figure out if that was something that was coming up soon or maybe farther back. She kind of gave me a heads up about how the medication would have to be adjusted because it's very delicate. You can only be on a few things when you're pregnant. She said, let me know kind of 6 months out when you're starting to think about pregnancy, and because some of the medications you have to adjust that far in advance. So when I got pregnant, I actually was not worrying about the migraines because I knew what was going to happen, and I knew how my care was going to change and what that was going to look like. Postpartum was the worst that they have ever been. I think it's just with the hormone changes and the stress and the lack of sleep. That was the hardest time I've ever had to get through in terms of mental health and migraine-wise. It was very difficult, but she was always there and ready to adjust my medication. I saw her nurse practitioner as well, who was wonderful. Anytime I could just send them a message and they would get right back to me.
I think that migraines through lifespan have their ups and downs. There are going to definitely be times she's going to have outstanding results where migraines really not the focus, not something she thinks about, and she only remembers, like many of our patients, right before treatment is due, oh, I have to go and see the doctor, I'm running out of my meds, or I'm due for my appointments. But there are going to be times that there's going to be struggle, and I think that with any chronic disease, that good relationship with your healthcare provider is utmost essential, where you know that the team is there for you when you're struggling, so that there's new opportunities and treatments that can be put in place, and there's a reasoning behind why that struggle might occur. And for women, we know that this can happen in your 40s when your menses start to become more irregular and you're going through perimenopause. Sometimes that can cause a huge irregularity in what's going on with migraines, and then we need to make adjustments in the plan.
Well, I know that whatever comes in the future as far as migraines, I know that I have the team at MedStar Georgetown Headache Center to be there for me no matter what happens, and to help me manage whatever the next stage of my life looks like.